She said it so casually I thought I'd misheard her. We were at the kitchen table, morning light spilling through the window like it always did, coffee in her favorite mug, mine still cooling beside my hand. It was just one mistake, she said, eyes steady, fingers tapping lightly against ceramic. For a moment, I actually believed she was talking about something else. A bill missed. A work error. Something mundane. But she didn't look away. And that's when I felt it, this strange cold settling in the middle of my chest. She didn't cry. Didn't apologize. Just watched me like I might agree. Like maybe we'd sit and talk it out like two people who'd had a bad week and needed to reconnect. I didn't say a word. I didn't nod or ask for details. I just looked at her like I didn't recognize her, and the silence between us started to stretch like a fault line. She tilted her head slightly, her voice lowering. It didn't mean anything. And still, I said nothing. Because something inside me had already cracked. Not shattered, not yet, but cracked in the way something does when it's never going to be the same again. A fault line doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It just waits for the wait. I sipped my coffee, even though it had gone bitter and lukewarm. My hands were steady, which surprised me. My thoughts weren't racing, they were slowing. As if everything in my head had shifted into some clinical, detached gear. Survival mode. She leaned forward slightly. Say something. I looked at her. Not through her, not past her, at her. Really looked. And what hit me wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was the quiet recognition that I no longer trusted the person sitting across from me. And if I couldn't trust her, I couldn't be with her. That was it. There wasn't going to be a big conversation or late-night crying session. She'd made her move, and I was already playing mine. I pushed back from the table, stood up slowly. Her brow furrowed. Where are you going? I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because there was nothing to say that she hadn't already destroyed with 6 words. It was just one mistake. I turned and walked upstairs. She didn't follow at first. She assumed I needed space. Maybe a long shower, a walk around the block, a slammed door and a night on the couch. She didn't understand. I wasn't leaving the room. I was leaving us. The zipper on the duffel bag was louder than I expected. That sharp metallic rasp broke the stillness like a strike of flint. Upstairs, the air felt different, denser, almost clinical. Like I was packing after a death. I pulled shirts from drawers without caring which ones. Shoes. A spare belt. Toothbrush. I didn't pause to think about what I might need for a few days. I packed as if I wouldn't return. Not because I had it all figured out, but because some part of me had already stepped outside our marriage and shut the door behind me. Footsteps on the stairs. Slower than usual. Hesitant. She hovered in the doorway, arms crossed loosely. Her tone was softer now, more tentative. You're going somewhere? I didn't stop moving. Folding jeans, not looking at her. My hand found the charger beside the bed. Wrapped the cord without thinking. She took a step closer, the creak of the floorboard betraying her weight. Look, I get that this is upsetting. But can we please just talk before you do something dramatic? That word landed like a slap. Dramatic. I zipped the bag and set it beside the bed. She kept going, voice rising just slightly, still not panicked, but trying to stake some control. You're not even going to ask me why? You don't even want to understand what happened? Her face was tense now. Defensive, not remorseful. I looked at her. She didn't flinch. You don't understand, she said, arms tightening. It happened after that fight we had, the one in January. I was just lost. I felt like we were barely speaking. It meant nothing. That word again, nothing. It meant nothing, but it changed everything. I didn't answer. I picked up the bag and moved past her. She stepped aside, blinking like she couldn't quite process that I wasn't biting, wasn't shouting, wasn't even asking who it was. Because I already knew that didn't matter. Not yet. She followed me down the stairs, hovering near the banister like she was debating reaching for me. So that's it? Her voice cracked a little. You're leaving without even trying to fix this? I paused at the door and looked back just once. Not to make a scene, just to mark the moment. She dropped a grenade on the table that morning and expected us to sweep the pieces together by nightfall. I opened the door without a word and walked into the morning air. Behind me, the house stayed quiet. She thought I'd be back, thought I needed space to cool off. She didn't realize I wasn't cooling. I was calculating. The first night, I didn't sleep. Not from heartbreak. Something colder kept me awake. A mental engine clicking into place, turning silently in the dark. Her text started before midnight. A string of mixed tones, casual, defensive, apologetic, pleading, like she was workshopping her lines in real time. I didn't want to hurt you. It wasn't planned. I just needed to feel something. I was numb. Each message read like an excuse drafted for someone else. Not me. Not the man who'd stood by her through the slow, dull years and the silent mornings and still chosen to stay. I didn't reply. Letting her speak into the void gave me control. As long as she thought I was processing, grieving, weighing the future, she'd keep trying to explain on my terms. That was the key. If she knew I was already looking for proof, already building a picture behind her back, she'd go dark or get smart. I needed her unguarded, still hoping. The next morning, I picked up my phone, not to call her, but to log into the shared mobile account. I'd set it up years ago, when she insisted she didn't care about privacy. Nothing to hide, she'd said. Apparently she'd forgotten. Text logs, call durations, timestamps. Her phone had patterns I never noticed before, pockets of activity during times she claimed to be unavailable. Mid-afternoon flurries. Late-night silences that used to feel like sleep but now hinted at something else. I started marking them, copy-pasting times into a spreadsheet. It felt clinical, which helped. Every number, every timestamp was distance, a buffer between what I wanted to believe and what I needed to know. One message stood out, a number not saved under a name, but repeated regularly. Never during our hours, always late, always brief. I checked the backups on her old tablet, still connected to her account. She never remembered to sign out. There, tucked beneath photos and shopping lists, were fragments, half-deleted conversations, pieces of something rehearsed. And then I saw it. Not just a message, but a thread. Labeled dates, shared jokes, coordinated plans. Same place? Rooms booked, keycard waiting. My breath didn't catch. My heart didn't pound. I just sat there, absorbing it. It wasn't one mistake. It was a second life. And now, I had the start of a blueprint. Not for revenge. For truth. Once you start seeing the cracks, it's impossible not to keep looking. I went deeper, not out of obsession, but necessity. If I was going to walk away from a marriage built over a decade, I wasn't going to do it blind. I needed clarity. Facts. Ammunition if it came to that. I pulled her travel history from airline reward accounts. She never changed her passwords, said she hated remembering new ones. Her mileage log painted a story she hadn't told me. A flight to Denver 3 months ago. Another to San Diego last fall. Both supposedly business trips with her team. But her company didn't operate in either city. I called a contact at her firm, someone I knew from a holiday party 2 years back. I kept it light, asked if the Denver office was still open. He laughed, said they'd never had one. I added the flight receipts to my folder. Next were the hotel bookings. I searched her email, her cloud storage, even the trash. Found confirmation emails she never fully deleted. A weekend at a boutique hotel just an hour from our home. Booked under her name, 2 guests on the reservation. That one was during a weekend she told me she needed solo space to recharge. I remember I'd even encouraged it, told her to take the time she needed. How generous of me. The messages filled in more gaps. She hadn't scrubbed everything. Buried in her iCloud backups were texts that mirrored a relationship, not a mistake. Inside jokes about bad room service. Notes on when I was out of town. Even complaints about me. I read one twice, just to make sure I'd understood it right. He doesn't even ask me how I'm really doing anymore. Apparently, 10 years of loyalty counted for less than this small talk. I saved everything, PDFs, screenshots, timestamps. I backed it up in triplicate, stored it offline. Not because I wanted to use it yet, but because I couldn't afford to lose it. Not if this went legal. Not if I needed to defend myself when her version of the story started changing. I wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. There was something purifying about the facts. Painful, yes, but clean. The more I uncovered, the less room there was for doubt. She hadn't slipped. She'd built this. And I had only just started to understand how far the structure reached. I opened her calendar like I was dissecting a lie in progress. Month after month, filled with neat little entries, Pilates, book club, coffee with old friends. At first glance, it was the schedule of a responsible, balanced woman. One who made time for self-care and connection. But now I had context. Now I had dates that didn't fit. I cross-checked the calendar with the message logs and travel receipts. It didn't take long for the whole facade to crumble. Yoga with Sarah had happened on the same night as a 2-hour phone call to that same unlisted number. Sarah lived in another state. Another evening marked board meeting coincided with a hotel booking 30 miles away. A suite. 2 nights. Paid in full. Then came the moment that pushed me past quiet confirmation and into something colder. 2 months ago, we'd planned to visit my family for the weekend. My sister had just had a major career moment, and we were supposed to celebrate. The night before, she'd said she felt sick. Stomach bug, she claimed. I'd gone alone, made excuses for her, texted her updates, photos. She responded with vague emojis and sleeping off the nausea. But now I saw it clearly. That same weekend, she'd flown to Chicago. I found the flight, the hotel, the dinner reservation under her name, tagged in an email from a rewards app. There was no stomach bug, no missed celebration. She just made a different choice. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because of how easily I believed her. I'd been trained, over years of little stories and white lies, to doubt my gut in favor of her tone. She always sounded so reasonable, so grounded. Now I saw the pattern. She hadn't just made time for someone else, she'd carved it out of our life. Cut weekends from our calendar, replaced intimacy with logistics, rerouted affection into obligation. I started building a timeline, not just of what happened, but of what she told me. Every lie, every shift in tone, every excuse she gave. The pattern revealed itself in contrast, her calm deflections, my quiet trust. I wasn't documenting betrayal anymore. I was building a case. I didn't expect to recognize him. But there he was, tucked into an old group photo from a wine tasting we'd attended with mutual friends 2 summers ago. He was the one in the corner, grinning a little too widely, arms slung around his wife's shoulder. A friend of a friend I'd barely registered at the time. I remembered shaking his hand once, polite, forgettable. Now he was unforgettable. His name popped up in a reservation email. Her forwarding address had auto-completed by mistake. Curious, I dug deeper. Found a shared Google Doc buried in her drive. A list of wine bars, weekend cabins, spots to check out next time. Collaborative notes. Edited by both. Next came the chat backups. She'd never deleted her Google cache. There, in a thread not labeled with his name, but with a cutesy pseudonym I almost gagged at, was the real script. Inside jokes I never heard. Private language. References to weekends they'd disappeared. Little lines like, "Can't believe how close we came to getting caught," and "When you touched my wrist in front of everyone, wild." Everyone. Meaning me? I started scanning old group photos. Gatherings, dinner parties. The slideshow in my head flickered faster now. He'd been there. Not often, but just enough. The +1 at a beach barbecue. A holiday mixer where he'd brought a specialty cocktail that everyone pretended to love. Harmless, or so it seemed. The worst part wasn't the deceit, it was the casual proximity. The way they'd laughed around my fire pit while I refilled their glasses. The way she had leaned into me at one of those dinners, brushing my shoulder just enough to remind me I was still hers. While he sat across the table, eyes down, sipping the wine I'd paid for. And then, something shifted. My sympathy snapped into focus, not toward her, but toward his wife. I remembered her. Quiet, kind eyes. The type who'd send thank you notes. She had no idea. I started saving again, this time with someone else in mind. Screenshots, timestamps, photos. It wasn't just about me anymore. The deception hadn't been private. It was social, domestic, violating in a way that extended beyond betrayal into cowardice. They hadn't just built a secret. They'd built it on top of 2 lives they pretended to respect. And mine wasn't the only one they'd dismantled in silence. The moment I realized it wasn't just betrayal, but a long, deliberate campaign, I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like someone preparing for impact. Quiet moves. No grand exits. No open threats. Just precision. I met with a lawyer under a different name, paid cash for the consult, explained the situation without emotion. He listened, leaned back, and said the words I'd already started rehearsing in my head. Document everything. Move strategically. Let her believe you're still deciding. That same day, I pulled half of our joint savings, exactly to the legal limit, and transferred it into a separate account in my name. Clean. Traceable. I had every right to it, but I didn't want to drain her dry. I wasn't here to punish her, just to protect myself. I froze the joint credit card. Not cancelled, just paused under the pretense of suspected fraud. Let her call the bank and sit on hold. Let her wonder. I was already ahead. Then came the apartment. Not some dingy temporary space, but a furnished one-bedroom across town, leased under my name, month to month. I paid the deposit in person. The manager handed me the keys with a quiet nod, said, "Starting over?" I didn't answer. I filled the new place with just enough. A bed, a table, one set of dishes. I left everything else behind, not out of sentiment, but detachment. I didn't want my old life following me here, cluttering the space I needed to think. Back at the house, I made no demands. Left my ring in the drawer where I'd always kept it overnight. That detail was deliberate. Let her believe I was still circling the idea of reconciliation. Give her time to feel like she had control. She still believed this was a pause. A rough patch. She told a friend, one of the few I still trusted, that we were taking space. Said we'd probably do counseling. That I was just overwhelmed. I let her say it. Because that story protected my silence. Because while she was performing heartbreak, I was preparing to end the act. The fall wouldn't come with fireworks. It would come with a whisper. And she wouldn't see it coming. She showed up on a Thursday evening, right as the sun dipped below the buildings, casting long shadows across the sidewalk outside my new apartment. I saw her silhouette through the peephole, hair done, eyes tired. She held a takeout bag in one hand, like some peace offering wrapped in soy sauce and false nostalgia. When I opened the door, her smile flickered. Not joy, relief. Like she still believed this was salvageable. "I didn't know what you'd eaten," she said, holding out the bag. "It's from that Thai place you like." I stepped aside without a word. Let her in. Not because I wanted to eat. Because I wanted to watch. She set the food on the table like we still shared habits. She looked around the apartment, spare, unpersonalized, and frowned, but didn't comment. Instead, she turned, eyes slightly glossy now. "I miss you." The words came soft, calculated. She moved closer, slow, like I was a stray she was trying to coax back inside. "I've been thinking about us," she continued, sitting on the arm of the couch. "How we got here. And I know I made a huge mistake, but I don't want to throw everything away." There it was again. Mistake. Singular. Neat. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Typed. A therapist's name. "I already made the appointment. Next week, if you'll come." Her eyes searched mine. For what, I couldn't say. Hope, maybe. Permission. But I gave her either. I sat in the chair across from her and nodded slowly. No reaction. Just enough to keep her believing I was still listening. Because I needed her talking. The more she talked, the more I saw it. The performance. Not cruel. Not desperate. But curated. Her posture softened. Her voice cracked just enough. She cried, finally. Real tears, maybe? But tears with a purpose. She didn't know I already had the map. She didn't know I'd read the script she'd rehearsed with someone else. "I know I heard you," she whispered, wiping her face. "But we can fix this." I met her gaze with the stillness I'd spent weeks building. I didn't argue. Didn't expose what I knew. Because this wasn't the moment for confrontation. It was the final act of her performance, and I needed her to finish it, so I could end mine. The file I'd compiled had grown to over 70 pages, screenshots, date-stamped photos, chat transcripts, financial records, calendar lies. Every detail checked twice, indexed, cross-referenced. Not chaos, not revenge. Evidence. I didn't blast it across the internet. That would have turned me into the villain. Instead, I chose 3 people, carefully. A friend who'd grown distant but once warned me to keep my eyes open. A colleague who'd always sensed something behind her curated perfection. And the third, his wife. I sent her an email. No subject line. Just attachments, a short note. "You deserve to know. I'm sorry it wasn't sooner." No name. No commentary. I didn't want her pain. I just couldn't let her stay in the dark any longer. Because I knew the look. The one I'd worn in front of mirrors for weeks, trying to reconcile the image I had of my life with what now lay in pieces. I didn't hear back from her. Didn't need to. But within 48 hours, the ripple began. She texted me, my wife. Rapid-fire messages, all caps, fractured grammar. "What did you do? You had no right. I can't believe you'd stoop to this." I didn't respond. Because I hadn't stooped. I'd simply removed the stage curtains. The fallout wasn't instant, but it moved quickly. A mutual friend canceled brunch with her. Another ghosted her in a group chat. She called me from a new number, voice shaky, not angry, just stunned. "I don't understand why you're doing this." I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because it was tragic how deeply she still believed she was the victim of exposure, not the architect of her own collapse. She thought the worst part would be me leaving. It wasn't. It was losing the version of herself she'd worked so hard to maintain. The loyal wife, the grounded friend, the trusted one in the room. He ghosted her. That was inevitable. Deleted his socials, left his job. Word was, his wife didn't take it quietly. I didn't gloat. I didn't share updates. I just watched her world quietly implode from the edge. Because the truth doesn't need volume to be devastating. Sometimes it just needs light. She came to the apartment again, this time without food, without makeup. Her face was raw, not from grief, but from confusion. As if she still didn't fully understand how the illusion unraveled. "You've said nothing," she began, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "You just vanished. And now people won't return my calls. What did you tell them?" I let the silence stretch. Not to be cruel, just to watch what filled the space when I stopped doing the emotional labor. She moved toward me, slowly, like someone approaching a cliff's edge. "Tell me what you want. Do you want to scream at me? Do you want me to beg? Just say something." I stood, walked to the kitchen drawer, and pulled out the folder. Not a digital file. Not a passive-aggressive message. Paper. Tangible. Weighty. I handed it to her. She hesitated, flipping it open with the same care she used when reviewing contracts or hotel confirmations. She skimmed the first few pages, chat transcripts, flight records, side-by-side comparisons of her calendar against actual travel. The further she went, the slower her breathing became. Then she reached the photos. Group events. Him in the background, her leaning toward him just enough to signal something private. I'd marked them with dates and captions, not dramatic, just precise. She sat down hard on the couch, the folder sliding from her hands to the floor. Her voice came out hoarse. You went through everything?" I nodded once. "You planned this?" Her eyes searched my face, looking for some glimmer of the man who used to believe her. "I documented it," I said quietly. "You planned it." She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Eventually she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go that far." I crouched beside the couch, picked up a single photo, and laid it on top. It was dated 3 weeks before her confession, a weekend away. She was smiling at him, not me. "You said it was just one mistake," I said calm and clear. "Turns out, the only mistake was believing you." She broke then, covered her face with both hands. Not performance, not defense, collapse. But I didn't move to comfort her. That wasn't mine to offer anymore. My job was done. The final curtain had dropped. I didn't parade the folder around. I didn't make speeches or send group texts. But in a town as small and socially cross-wired as ours, silence has a gravity of its own. And when the version of the story she'd crafted, clean, manageable, sympathetic, began to conflict with undeniable evidence, her foundation cracked. Her social circle didn't implode overnight. It fractured in quiet ways. One couple stopped inviting her to dinner. Another canceled last minute, then never rescheduled. A friend she leaned on early, someone who'd consoled her with wine and well-meaning clichés, went distant. I didn't nudge any of it. I simply waited. The story told itself. Because eventually, people start doing math. Her one mistake had dates, and places, and parallel versions of her schedule that didn't add up. Friends who knew both of us started noticing, remembering. That weekend she skipped my sister's party. The times she showed up late to events with vague excuses. The smile that flickered just a bit too quickly when his name was mentioned. No shouting match could have damaged her credibility the way her own trail did. And the other man? Gone. Ghosted her. No warning. No explanation. Just vanished. Word spread quickly that he'd quit his job and moved states. His wife hadn't stayed silent. She didn't lash out, but she spoke plainly. Showed a few friends what I had sent. Let them draw their own conclusions. When people asked me, I didn't feed the fire. "I'm moving forward," I'd say. It left her with nothing to push against. No villain to blame. No scene to perform against. She tried briefly. A social media post about heartbreak and growth. filled with inspirational quotes and filtered photos. It landed flat. Too many people had seen the backstage. She called again. I let it ring out. The fallout wasn't loud, but it was permanent. She wasn't exiled, just reduced. Invitations stopped. Trust faded. The pedestal she'd built for herself, wife, friend, reliable voice, cracked under the weight of what people now knew. Not because I shouted, but because I didn't have to. Truth doesn't echo. It endures. The message came months later. I saw her name flash across my screen while I was packing boxes. Moving day. New city. New role. Not an escape, just a clean page. Her text was short. Can we talk once before you go? No plea. No grand apology. Just one last reach into a space she no longer occupied. I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the screen. There was a time I would have said yes, for closure, for answers, for the part of me that still replayed our good years like background noise. But that part didn't make decisions anymore. I didn't reply. I loaded the last box into the car and stepped out onto the balcony one final time. The air was lighter here. Or maybe I was. Lighter without the weight of doubt. Of wondering who she really was behind the gentle smiles and deflected questions. She hadn't just betrayed the marriage. She'd betrayed the version of me that gave her benefit after benefit, excuse after excuse, when the truth had been whispering through the cracks all along. And now, as I stood in a new city waiting for keys to a place no one else had ever called home, I wasn't angry. Just done. Because she didn't miss me. She missed the safety I gave her. The calm. The loyalty. The sense that no matter what storm she stirred, someone would hold the line. That's what she lost. And that's what she would never find again. I wasn't irreplaceable. But the man I'd been for her? The one who showed up, stayed steady, carried more than his share without complaint? He disappeared the moment she showed him what he really meant. She once said, "It was just one mistake." But in the end, it wasn't the cheating. It was believing I'd stay. I slid my phone into my pocket, turned off the lights one last time, and locked the door behind me. Not angry. Just gone.